This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, it's good to be back following a 2-week break, something I seldom ever treat myself to. And happy as I am to be back, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you how good it felt to kick back. It wasn't totally vacay. I got plenty of work done, but 2 weeks of oceanfront living in a beautiful condo on the property of the Omni Plantation Resort and Spa on Northeast Florida's Amelia Island can't help but make one feel really good. But it's back to the grind, and this week's interview is one that was lots of fun for me to produce because it's with a trusted peer, an old friend, and an erstwhile frenemy, Keith Gerson. That comes up right after a quick reminder to hit the website at franchisetodaypodcast.com, make guest suggestions, leave reviews, or check out the growing catalog of previous interviews. These span more than a dozen years and are nearly 500 strong in number and growing. A quick tease here, too, about next week's guest, Tim Murphy, CEO of Boomers Parks, and his completely different spin on family entertainment centers. You don't want to miss that, but a quick break here, and when I return, I'll be joined by this week's guest, one-time hippie, lifelong rock and roller, restaurant service and franchising icon, Keith Gerson. So don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
We are all familiar with Vistage, YPO, and EO. Well, now comes Zor Forum, a somewhat similar type of executive group, but this one comes with a twist. Zor Forum groups are exclusively for franchisors. Imagine a peer group for sharing and networking on a platform built exclusively for franchise executives. Zor Forum members are afforded unparalleled access to best practices and some of the brightest minds within the franchising world through regular meetings and a dedicated communications platform. In this post-COVID world, a franchise-specific mastermind or peer group is an endeavor worth making time for. Zor Forum groups of 6 to 10 will bring leaders together that are in similar situations, but with exclusivity in terms of their competitive sets, so that each can openly help others benefit from their respective knowledge, perspective, and experience with no fear of competitive loss. Network, learn, strategize, and remain motivated along your journey. Join a peer group, not just any peer group. Join the only one designed for emerging franchisors. Join Zor Forum. Learn more at zorforum.com. That's www.zorforum.com. CFE Keith Gerson brings 50-plus years of executive franchise-level expertise as president and CEO at Gerson Advisory Services, which opened for business January 1st, 2024, following his dozen years as my frenemy at FranConnect. Now, a little-known fact about his FranConnect career, and yours truly, will be revealed in this interview, so listen closely and don't miss that. Over the course of his career, Keith has established a proven track record as a franchisor and franchisee, and has amassed success in building rapid growth and highly profitable franchise organizations. Today, his focus is on helping franchisors get to their desired future state in franchise sales, operations, communications, and engagement. Recognized in franchising circles for his extensive leadership experience and his ability to drive execution, Keith is a highly rated keynote speaker and author, and has had the rare opportunity to have created several leading franchise systems from inception through launch and through rapid and sustained growth, leading them from emerging status to highly recognizable enterprise-level organizations. Keith Gerson, welcome to Franchise Today.
Stan, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here with you.
It's great having you, Keith. And I kind of teased this episode of Franchise Today on LinkedIn as having as my guest coming up a trusted friend, a respected peer, and an erstwhile frenemy. And that was read by our good friend Nate Greenberg, who we both know that among the many skills and talents that Nate shares with the franchise world, he's an incredible cartoonist, right? So Nate called to tell me that he forged a picture in his mind's eye when he saw that LinkedIn tease about you being my guest. And he said, I haven't drawn it yet, Stan, but I see you and Keith on horses with swords, and you're each wearing your respective coat of arms, you with FRM and he with FranConnect. And he says, that's the picture. I can't wait to hear the interview.
I love it. I'll have what he's drinking.
Well, Keith, we're going to do what we do every week on Franchise Today, and we're going to take you back to the beginning of your time in franchising and sharing with us what that looked like. But before I take us there, I've been trying to remember myself how long it's been and where I was when first we met. And I kind of think I knew of you when you were at Alpha Graphics, but I don't think I actually knew you until Puroclean. What's your memory?
Well, first, anyone who knows me knows that a short-term memory is not my friend, though we are talking a long while ago. That sounds right. I would say that that's probably where we really first became acquainted, though I think we'd said hello on the trade show floors over the years, but I'd say that was the point of beginning.
And I'm like you when it comes to that short-term memory. By the way, who is this?
I was going to say don't quit your day job, but actually I think that you could make that your day job.
All right, Keith, let's give the audience a break. Let's take it back to the beginning and tell us when was the beginning for you when it comes to franchising? What were you doing then, and how did it sneak up on you and hit you in the head?
Thank you. So anybody who has seen pictures of me back in the day would basically be asking themselves, would I hire this guy? And the answer would have been no. I was kind of a long hair hippie rock and roll guy traveling the world and doing my best to make a living that way. I met my wife to be in college, and we're talking about 1971. And it was actually after watching my bank account go down with all the various things I was attempting to do with my life, I responded to an ad in the Portland Oregonian, and they were looking for a manager. And what happened is, other than my music, which was not the most marketable of skills, my parents had me working in their concession stands. They were very entrepreneurial, even though my father was a sergeant of detectives homicide LAPD. But so during the summer months, I'm running snack bars. I'm actually a multi-unit supervisor, with my mother having to drive me from park to park to park because I wasn't old enough to drive a car yet. So I've been in the business of at least food service and supervision and leadership for many, many years. But it was in 1974, responding to an ad in the Portland Oregonian, which was looking for management basically in McDonald's restaurants in the Pacific Northwest. So this actually, August of this year, will mark my 50th year having entered franchising, and the door was with McDonald's restaurants.
When you told me 50 years, or when I read 50 years, I kind of felt, hallelujah, there's somebody in franchising older than me, still alive and kicking. But
I got started early. Stan, I'm still not sure that I'm older than you. I think you have me beat.
I think you're wrong, Keith, but we can save that for another day. I used to love the fact when Jerry Darnell was with us that I could always count on the fact that I knew he was older than me, and now he's left us. So I don't know that I want to go down that road with you, Keith, but I think I've got you beat by a couple or 3 years anyway. So give us some milestones along the way from being a 15-year-old wet behind the ears, unable to drive to work himself. What are some of the milestones between then and half a century later?
Sure. Well, with McDonald's restaurants, I worked my way up very quickly from an assistant manager in Chehalis, Washington, to becoming a multi-unit supervisor and manager of many McDonald's that were in the area. The franchisee of record met her demise way too young. She was shot in an accidental discharge of a gun, and I subsequently, besides really taking over while the owner went on hiatus, actually had the opportunity to go to work for McDonald's Corporation and taking supervisory responsibilities of franchisees in the Pacific Northwest. So that in and of itself, I would say, marked really the beginning of a life devoted to franchising.
More so food service or franchising at that point?
It was a combination of both. So operational support for sure. on the franchising side of the equation with franchisees, including the one that I was taking over for because of, again, the demise of the owner's short-lived life, and the business was going to be taken over by her husband, who unfortunately was the one on the other end of that gun.
Wow.
So, it was a very sad story, but it really taught me a couple of really, really important lessons. One is decisions decide destiny, and there's no action without a decision. So the decision for me to leave and join McDonald's became crucial, and you're also known by the company you keep. And so as a result of that, people in other franchise brands wanted to know what I knew because I was working for what they perceived to be the most put together franchise system in the history of franchising. So I ended up going to work for Jack in the Box restaurants. They were all company owned and operated, and I was given the opportunity to help establish franchising for Jack in the Box restaurants and taking over both company owned and operated in addition to franchise operations for the Pacific Northwest and for parts of Canada. One door opened up a significant opportunity for me. And because of what I did at Jack in the Box, that opened up yet another opportunity with another franchise brand that was company owned and operated, where I was given the opportunity to create the franchise system for Mrs. Fields Cookies from its very inception, because they were all company owned and operated.
How many years did we spend there?
So 8 years with Jack in the Box, 9 years with Mrs. Fields.
So you're the kind of guy that doesn't jump around. I mean, you've had a lot to add to your resume, but you park for a while everywhere you've been, don't you?
Yeah, for the most part, that's true. And I'm not one to, I'm very loyal to the brands that I work. We know if I jump ahead that I've been where I had recently been for a period of 12 years. But there were a couple of short stops along the way, a few years. But I always have to remind everybody, if they look at my resume, the docket of where I've been, that's over the course of 50 years. So the most important thing that I've had to remind myself is I don't want people asking the question, is that 50 years of franchising experience, or is it 1 year repeated 50 times? I didn't want to be that guy. So I've devoted myself to a life of learning everything I can about franchising.
Well, we've got a couple of interesting parallels in our lives, Keith, in that you with your music start and mine with radio years before franchising and podcasting. And, a couple of years that we've each spent my frenemy as CRM guys when we each crossed to the dark side and became suppliers. We'll unpack all that a little bit later. But first, walk us up a little further into what came next. And we want to take the first half of our time together today to just kind of help the audience learn how much went into the developing of the Keith Gerson that many of us know today.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I had to learn early on, for example, when I was at Jack in the Box restaurants and I was in the role of a vice president, ultimately, I had people working for me that had been with the organization for 20 to 30 years. So I was just still nascent in their eyes. And one of the things that I had to develop was a technique that I refer to as flexing. Now, I'll take you back and tell you a quote that really stayed with me. And it's a quote that's attributed to Albert Einstein. He said, "If a person studies a subject for just 15 minutes a day, in a year he will be an expert, and in 5 years he may be a national expert." I also read something very similar in Reader's Digest that said, pick a topic, stick with that topic, read about that 30 minutes a day for a year, and at the end of the year, you'll be a national expert. So that's what I started doing. I became a voracious reader and somebody that was devoted to leadership, and the topic that I picked was behavioral management, because no matter what you do in franchising, no matter what you do in life, you are basically working with and through other people, and you learn quickly that you need them more than they need you. So I needed to learn how to get the best out of the teams that I'd worked with. And that helped me build credibility, because your audience is quickly going to learn that I'm also the king of cliches. And we all know that one that goes, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that's really what I worked on, is just, basically the understanding and the psychology of, if you will, of leadership, and understanding the important differences between managing behaviors versus attitudes. The latter, you'll end up just defending your semantics all day long, because you can't see what's going on in their brains, and they may look the part and look the role, but doesn't mean that's who they really are. So forget about talking about people's attitude.
You made a statement here a few minutes ago about choices, and And that brought to mind an old Stephen Covey cliche, which is the difference between those who think that their circumstances are a function of their conditions as opposed to their decisions.
Repeat that one more time. I think that's worth hearing.
That our circumstances are more a function of our decisions than they are of our conditions.
Yeah. I completely concur with that. Stated differently, I might say opportunities don't happen, you create them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've done along the way, because I didn't talk about before the franchising was my time as a short order cook at the Simcoe Cafe in Goldendale, Washington, working in a slaughterhouse, St. Regis Lumber Mill. I hunted, I trapped, and then I became chief docent and caretaker at the Maryhill Museum of Fine Arts. That was the period of time in which I'm watching my bank account dwindle away. But that's also the part that I'm married, I'm now raising a child, and that became a purpose to think beyond myself. I had mouths to feed and people to care for.
So pick it up from the last stop and take us forward, Keith. What came next?
All right. So we've covered the QSR and specialty retail days, and those three companies represented the first 20 years of my life in franchising. And there were some very interesting things that were happening because I'm learning invaluable lessons at McDonald's, the importance of systems and processes, the importance of consistency in branding, defined playbooks, McDonald's, how they did their site selection, which was based on operating next to churches, basically, or communities that had multiple churches and customer experience. And then Jack in the Box, it all became differentiation. This was crazy. When I was there, McDonald's was spending $100 million per year in advertising, and Jack in the Box's marketing budget was $1 million per year. How do you compete against someone who's spending 100 times X greater? And that's through differentiation. And so I learned at Jack in the Box, the difference here, it was an adult market versus targeting kids with upscale products versus a dollar value menu. It was 24 hours, 7-day-a-week drive-through restaurants. Jack in the Box, people may not know, innovated the drive-through, and late nights. It was about blowing up the clown. It was about all the clever things they did, like antenna balls that many of us remember collecting as kids, and increased product pricing and focused on highly different products like steak and dinner fries and A1 sauce and garlic rolls and things that we were doing back in that day, which resulted in a sizable change in average check and total system revenues. But it also created a lot of frustration with the franchisees because their cost of goods sold increased from about 18 to 22% to running in some cases as high as 38 to 40%. So were their sales increasing? Yes, they were, but none of it was finding its way to the bottom line. And that's when I jumped over to Mrs. Fields Cookies. And a lesson learned there was, at the time, they were 100% again company owned and operated. And there was a concern that if you franchised, somehow they were going to go ahead and compromise and use the wrong types of products in the interest of saving money. So when we started franchising, though, these franchisees were now turning unprofitable locations into profitable ones. So in other words, worst reason to ever go into franchising, let's get rid of all the contingent liabilities we have because we're on the lease. And so I'm now gaining notoriety for my franchise expertise. And besides creating the franchising program, I said, I'll do it if I can also have ownership of everything that's franchising other than the R&D, product development, and distribution. So that was very, very important role there as a senior vice president of worldwide franchising and licensing. So then what comes next is recognizing that I am now between 1999 and 2012 a leading franchisor with ChemDry, Alpha Graphics, and PuroClean. And as president and chief operating officer, was consistently achieving a success as my focus was on scaling through franchise sales and focusing on unit level economics. And what I was learning now at this point in time is the signs on the buildings may be different, but the franchise business model remains the same. So I'm increasing my visibility through these points in time and winning in thoughts and minds through thought leadership, through webinars, articles, blogs, speaking, engaging, and I'm starting to amass in the process a wealth of knowledge, as well as also being rewarded with access potentially to equity should there be liquidity events that occurred. So what I learned quickly in my roles in these different products is in business, words are words and explanations are explanations and promises are promises, but only performance is the reality. And so I took over PureClean as its president and chief operating officer under the leadership of David McKinnon, who is now co-chairman of the board along with Rory O'Dwyer. And while there, it was the Great Recession. And now I'm learning one of the most important lessons of my life, which is when everybody else turns off the marketing spigots because they can't sell a franchise, that's the perfect time to double down. So as the king of cliches, I will stay here. Stopping advertising to save money is like stopping your watch to save time, right? Think about that again. Stopping advertising to save money is like stopping your watch to save time. But what happened during this period of time is we're doubling down on marketing. We're increasing our initial franchise fee from $25,000 to $40,000 so we could fund a franchise broker strategy. We assembled a franchise advisory board of directors, held franchise conferences. There was bad ill will that was going on prior to certain events. Just there was a clash between previous ownership and the franchisees. But at the first conference, which was in short order after my joining the company, I put a table up with 5 chairs and I made the leadership team sit down with me with no agenda other than to say, ask any and all questions. All questions will be addressed to the best of our abilities. And all of a sudden, people who are in the audience are starting to get a feel and a flavor that this is not a defensive leadership team. This is a team that is willing to be open and transparent. And during this period of time, there was a very tight focus on not only adding franchises, but focusing in on the franchise unit level economics. So if somebody were to go to my website, gersonadvisoryservices.com, which obviously I'm cheating and giving you the latest and greatest here, but we were able to significantly increase from during the 3 years of the Great Recession from 92 locations to well over 300 in that 3-year period. Consumer level revenues grew from 46 million to 90 million, and profitability of the organization soared 3.5 times while running the lowest attrition rates in the history of the company. Though I will tell you, Steve White is an amazing, amazing leader, and I would bow to that guy any day of the week because he's taken what happened between my leadership there and somebody in the middle, two somebody's in the middle to where he's at today. He's built an amazing, sustainable, rapid growth business, and I love that guy to death.
As we all agree about Steve White, there's nobody I know that knows him that doesn't feel exactly the same way as you do. And you talk about a servant leader, and they always say, if you want to get something done, give it to somebody who's busy. I've never met anybody with shoulders as broad as his to take on more challenges and responsibilities that are not just for the good of his business, but for the good of the order. Would you agree?
100%. You know, I do what I do as long as I feel like I'm still growing and learning. And I will tell you that I would humble myself and gladly work for somebody like Steve White because I know I would learn so much in working with him. He's a rare breed, and there's just there's a handful of guys that I worship and who are terrific mentors. So,
well, why don't we spend the next few minutes before our break talking about what came next? And then we'll come back from the break and pick up from there.
All right. Well, you happened to introduce me to somebody at this point in time, and it was a gentleman by the name of Amit Pamecha, and he was the founder and the then CEO of FranConnect. And so we used to laugh about this was my foray from being a franchisor. And I didn't mention I was also a franchisee of Mrs. Fields Cookies while also being the SVP of the company. But I was working for private equity at the time, and I ended up, as a result, putting my franchise companies on FranConnect. And you were the one who introduced me to that company's founder and said that there may be a good fit. And that's when I made that jump to, again, what some would call the dark side. So
now, what you haven't shared is where was I at the time that I made that introduction?
At FranConnect.
And what was it that I was trying to do but replace myself?
Well, that's exactly what you were we're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, it always boils down to core values, always boils down to a fit, being where you feel like you can make a difference and being somewhere where you feel like you're taking the high road. And so I had experience in working for founders of companies. And even though many would find them challenging, I owe to my father the gift of emotional intelligence, which he imparted in me, both, I think, through genetics as well as just life lessons, in order to be a successful guy in the world of law enforcement, where, again, he's Sergeant of Detectives of Homicide, goes on to become Chief Special Agent of American Express, only one of two in the United States. There was one in New York and one in L.A. L.A. was my father, and I learned a lot of life lessons that allowed me to be able to go in where other people may not be as comfortable, so I could potentially help change and establish the core values and the culture of that company.
Well, in fairness to Amit, it's the fact that he is the smart man that he is, and that he's got the foresight that he had to begin a franchise CRM company long before anybody even dreamed of what that might look like. But Amit ran through a bunch of people over the years, myself included, who did have a lot to offer and hopefully made our marks on the early days of FranConnect, but it came at a price. And it took somebody like you to be able to do what your prior experience rooted you and grounded you and enabled you to do, working with founders. It's very difficult to work with a founder who grows a company to the point where it's time to let go a little of the reins and let others take a business to the next level. We see that with franchisors every day, don't we?
We sure do. It's a very important lesson. But again, I knew how to get more out of team members, and that's what I did. So that was from 2012 through the end of 2023.
There are a lot of people that know that you and I were head-on competitors for a long time. Me at FRM, where I'm still very engaged and involved. You at FranConnect, but I don't know that there are too many people who knew that I'm the person who spearheaded the effort to bring you to FranConnect. And,
I don't know now.
And to explain to you all of the good, bad, and ugly of what it would be like to be there for the length of time that you took to grow into the relationship, both with Amit and with the business. And it's the thing about franchising that I just love so much, Keith. We look past the selfish to the selfless just about every minute of every day and help people find the places that they should be and invite them to improve their lot in life and do it without an expectation of any reward. It's just what we do.
That's right. And that's what keeps me here. And I consider it just basically casting our bread upon the waters, as is said. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing here if I didn't believe that we in franchising make a difference, a significant difference. We help people basically make their dreams come true. It sounds cliche, but we've heard before, people get into franchising, and this is a Bob Gappa truism that I've used, which is he used to call ill-wed. They may come in, but for different reasons. Maybe some are for the income. Others, it's about the lifestyle, wealth, building equity, debt reduction, et cetera, and creating a legacy. And so God bless franchising. I wake up every day excited to do what I do.
Let's take a quick break here, Keith. And when we come back, let's talk about this new chapter in your life and where you see things heading on a go-forward basis. This is Franchise Today. I'm Stan Friedman, talking today with my good friend, trusted peer, respected peer, and one-time frenemy, Keith Gerson, heading up Gerson Advisory Services.
Franchise Today will be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And the conversation continues with my buddy, Keith Gerson, who's at a new inflection point in his life. Keith, I've heard already one of my good friends might have saved you from yourself already when you were thinking about what to call your new business. And I heard something about an acronym for the Gas Man. Does that ring any bells?
Yes, it sure does. I have a self-deprecating sense of humor, and I chose Gerson Advisory Services knowing that the acronym was GAS. I taglined it by saying basically fuel for your growth engine, because that's what I do. I help brands grow. But before anybody else could beat me to the punch, I sent out an announcement to 85 friends in franchising, and I told them that I had started GAS, and then I said in parentheses, not that kind, just before someone else took it there. So yeah, it's all about helping to grow.
There you go. So let's talk about the niche that you're in now and what inspired this next chapter in your life after the many years at FranConnect. What inspired you to make this change and to step up to what it is you're doing now?
Yeah, it had been 50 years in the making. And my whole life, I've basically done pro bono work. Even though I'm paid by FranConnect, they offered me an opportunity, which was just stellar. And I thank them so much for it, to allow me to develop my personal brand, to allow me to conduct the thought leadership on behalf of the company, to represent the company out in franchise events, etc. And as a result, it created a unique status for me, that of super connector, where I know so many franchisors and executives and CEOs that I can literally just pick up the phone and call them, and they're there for me, and I'm there for them if there's anything I can ever do, and never with my hand out. Now, of course, I've started my own business, and I give a lot of credit to my son Jesse. Jesse Gerson is a vice president in customer experience, working for a major SaaS company out of he's in Austin, Texas. His company's in New York, but he's an adult. He's a smart businessman. He's been asking me for years, why won't you do it for yourself? And it's been so many years. And frankly, I have embraced the golden handcuffs. I've embraced the fact that there are components of the potential of getting to great wealth in the event of an equity play, if you will, and an exit. So it was a long time in coming, but then I had a milestone birthday on October 5th, and I had already told myself, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So it was basically time to put it all together. And I've always told my family it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and that people that are just looking to basically score and it's all about making money will never ever find it. It's putting all of these things together. So it was just the recognition, and fortunately it all came together, just like puzzle pieces that have been sitting out on the table for an extended period of time. I took the time to put them together, and I recognized that one of the things that helped me get to where I am was that I've had a tight focus on one business model my entire adult life, and that's franchising. And getting back to my point of beginning and talking about choosing that topic in which you can be an expert, I got to a point in time where I've built my expertise, built my personal brand, and recognize now that people are willing to bring me in and remunerate me very well for my unique perspectives and the fact that I have this gray hair, and that it wasn't 50 years repeated one time. It's a wealth of experience. So as value as my experience is, my social capital also commands the highest premiums. And so I entered this world, and I've been very successful at scaling a lot faster than I thought that I would, but that it was important to ensure that I can deliver excellence and value to my clients consistently. So I don't want to scale too fast where anybody gets behind. So I've come to the realization, getting back to the marathon, not a sprint, that my personal brand is my greatest asset. It's the fact that people know who I am, and they know what I stand for. They know that I'm an authentic individual, and that I mean nothing but the best for them. And that is a recipe for success, and it's proving very much to be true.
Amen. And so what is the niche, Keith, that you are going to solve for franchisors? What is going to be the sweet spot that you're going to fill?
Thank you. Sell more franchises, drive top-line revenues, improve franchise operational performance, and increase franchisee engagement and adoption. Those are the four legs of the stool, if you will, that we'll do. Now, there's ancillary stuff that we can do as well. I love working with private equity. amongst other things, now I'm also helping franchisors when it comes to selling more franchises and being able to drive those revenues and improve the franchise operations, et cetera. I go through franchise disclosure documents, and I offer also as a service a competitive analysis so everybody could see exactly how they look and how they perform, what franchise failures look like, what does profitability look like, what does payback periods look like, what's the failure rate of franchises, et cetera. So you can really truly know the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors, and you can make sure that you adjust accordingly. And oftentimes I tell people, don't look at the McDonald's, for example, of what they're doing today. You need to go back decades, and you need to look at what they were doing when they were breaking through in the early days of their career. How did they get there?
There's something else that you said that really sticks with me in our conversation today, Keith, especially in this era of roll-ups and private equity companies just amassing portfolios. In fact, brands becoming umbrellas for multiple other brands to be joining them. And the thing that stuck with me is about the personal brand, your personal brand, and how many brands now are getting pushed together into a space where a peer of mine in the FRM/ARC world, Paul Collins, posed a question to a franchisor that we were talking with about the importance of not just being a house of brands, but being a branded house, and that your culture is firm and established across all those brands. And if you don't have that as an anchor, then you've got a house of cards.
Well, you sure do.
Listen, we're about to turn the final corner here, and I'm going to be in a moment asking you for contact info so others can partake more of a one-to-one kind of an opportunity with you. But before we get there, Keith, what, if anything, haven't I asked that you wished I might have?
You have asked some phenomenal questions. This is arguably the best interview that I've participated in, and you've allowed me to tell my story.
Keith, what about some contact info so those who have enjoyed getting to know you here, perhaps could be there are some in the audience that don't know who you are or didn't know who you are before dialing in today?
Thank you. First, my website, Gerson, Gerson, advisoryservices.com. You can go to the Contact Us page. And after you put your information in, you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and play around with my Generation 5 conversational bot for booking time on my calendar, as well as Calendly. They can email me at Keith, Keith, at gersonadvisory.com. And my telephone number, which I'll give out, mobile number is 954-815-5228.
Keith, you and I, we share 1,548 LinkedIn connections, and I think this interview has helped demonstrate why. I'm really proud that we had the opportunity to do this. It took a little time getting it together, but things that are worth having are worth waiting for.
Well, Stan, thank you. Honestly, your interviewing techniques, the fact that you have a face made for and a voice made for radio. You're the best of the best at doing this, and I frequently enjoy listening to the interviews on your podcast. So thank you so much for creating the opportunity to get back together and spend time with a dear friend.
It's been a real pleasure, Keith, and I look forward to seeing you on the trail. Keith Gerson, CEO of Gerson Advisory Services. Thanks for being here. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Next week, I'm back with Tim Murphy, CEO of Boomers Parks, Family Entertainment Centers with a twist. Have a great week, and until then, I'm Stan Friedman wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising. And Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. So at American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.